They cheated and called it growth. These Reddit stories will make you question everything about love and trust. Story number 1. My wife cheated and then asked why I was so dramatic.
I never thought I'd write about my life on Reddit, but here we are. So, my wife cheated. Yeah, it's as cliche as a Hallmark card if the card was on fire and someone poured bleach on it. I found out in the worst possible way, through a notification from a dating app that popped up on her tablet while she was charging it in the kitchen. Spoiler alert, she wasn't charging anything except her moral compass. I stared at her for a full minute, just blinking like a confused goldfish. She looked back at me with the kind of innocent face a dog gives you after pooping on the carpet. "What? I'm not doing anything," she said.
I should have reacted calmly, right? Like a rational adult. Nope, my inner soap opera star kicked in full force. I started pacing, flailing, and giving monologues that could have won awards at the Oscars for most dramatic human ever. My cat, Mr. Whiskers, joined in with judgmental stares, probably thinking, finally, he's emotionally unstable like the rest of us. Every fiber of my being screamed, "Why, woman, why?" And that's when she looked at me, all serene and perfect, and asked the line that will haunt me forever. "Why are you so dramatic?"
I literally froze. For a second, I wondered if she just said that out loud or if I had imagined it as a cruel joke from the universe. My brain did that thing where it repeats a sentence over and over like a bad Spotify loop. Why am I dramatic? Why am I dramatic? I think I might have actually levitated a few inches off the floor because that's what emotional shock feels like, apparently. And then I yelled because silence was no longer an option. And oh, she clapped. She literally clapped her hands like I just performed a one-person Broadway show.
After the initial meltdown, I did what any sane person would do. I started interrogating her. "Who?" I demanded. "Where?" I asked. "Why?" I screamed, probably scaring the neighbors and the postman simultaneously. She looked at me with that infuriating calm again, like she had a cheat sheet on how to gaslight a husband. She said, "It was one time. I didn't think it mattered. Stop being so dramatic." At this point, my dramatic side was fully in control, like I had invited Hamlet, a telenovela villain, and a cartoon character into my brain, and they were all debating how to ruin my life at the same time. Then came the plot twist I didn't see coming. She had apparently written me a farewell letter before the whole thing went down, but forgot to give it to me. Instead, it was sitting in her secret drawer, which for someone who shops exclusively at IKEA is just a drawer she thought I wouldn't open because it was too boring. I opened it, and let me tell you, the letter was both horrifying and hilarious. She apologized, but also included bullet points about why she felt justified and concluded with, "P.S. You're being dramatic about literally everything." I stared at the paper like it had just insulted my dog, my mother, and my taste in socks simultaneously. But the universe wasn't done torturing me. The very next day, I ran into the guy. Not metaphorically, I mean in the grocery store. There he was, buying a single cucumber, looking completely normal like none of this ever happened. My wife waved at him like they were long-lost pen pals. I'm standing there, heart racing, a man on the verge of spontaneous combustion, trying to figure out how to say, "You touched my life and also my dignity," without sounding like a Disney villain. And that's when it happened. He winked at me. A full, unapologetic wink. At this point, I lost all control. I ran home, tripped over my own shoes, and screamed so loudly the neighbors called the cops. I locked myself in the bathroom, crying, laughing, and making interpretive dance moves like a man possessed. I texted my friends every detail, hoping for advice or at least someone to laugh with me because misery loves company and apparently also sarcasm. That's when my wife knocked on the door and said, "Are you okay?" And I swear my brain tried to physically punch itself out of my skull. "No," I yelled. "No, I am not okay. You cheated, and now you're acting like this is my emotional problem?" Then, in a move worthy of a sitcom, she smiled, put on a tiny scarf like she was about to do a yoga tutorial, and said, "Look, you're just so dramatic. You always overreact." At that moment, the floodgates opened. I started narrating every absurdly dramatic moment of our marriage, her stealing my fries, hiding my socks, the time she accidentally glued my keys to the table. She kept interrupting with, "That's not dramatic, that's life," which only fueled my rage-fueled storytelling. It got so chaotic that Mr. Whiskers joined in by knocking over a lamp because apparently even cats have a sense of irony. By the end of it, I realized something important. Life had just given me the ultimate dark comedy. My wife cheated, the universe mocked me, and I was the star of the most ridiculous tragedy imaginable. And yet, in all the chaos, there was a weird, painful, hilarious clarity. I wasn't dramatic. I was just alive, in a story so absurd it could only exist in real life. She, on the other hand, was still sipping tea and asking me why I was dramatic. And I just stared back, laughed maniacally, and thought, well, if life's a circus, I'm already the clown. Story number 2. She destroyed our marriage and said I didn't support her growth. I always thought our marriage was like a sitcom, minus the laugh track, until the day she dropped the "I need to grow" bomb. It hit me like a pie to the face, except the pie was made of divorce papers and existential dread. We'd been married 5 years, and I genuinely thought we were thriving. I mean, she wanted to start a podcast about self-actualization in the modern age, and I tried to support her by being her first listener. I even pretended to care about whether chakras were aligned, and that was a lot for a guy whose spiritual high point is picking the right Netflix category. She told me, dead serious, that I wasn't supportive enough of her growth. I blinked because I thought buying her a fancy yoga mat and letting her spend $400 on crystals counted as support. She then gave me this epic monologue about how I stifled her creative energy and emotionally imprisoned her soul. I nearly asked if she wanted me to pack her a snack for the soul flight, but I held back. The way she said it, I half expected her to sprout wings. Honestly, at that point, I was wondering if I should check if she had been secretly cast in a Marvel movie. The next morning, she was gone, like she'd evaporated into a cloud of ambition. And I wasn't talking a simple gone to the store kind of gone. I mean, she left a trail of manifestos on our kitchen counter, each one progressively more apocalyptic, warning me of the dangers of emotional stagnancy and platonic mediocrity. I'd tried to laugh it off, but it was hard when my cereal was judging me for eating it alone. I spent the day pacing, texting her, Googling how to support your wife's growth without getting evicted from your own home, and realizing that all the self-help books I'd bought her were actually plotting against me. Then came the first sign that she wasn't just running away to find herself. She had a public Instagram post titled, and I quote, "Breaking Chains, a Journey Beyond Limitation." It was a picture of her standing on a cliff with arms wide, wind in her hair, and me squinting in the background holding a grocery bag and a frozen pizza. Comments were filled with strangers praising her bravery, while I was silently hoping someone would post, "Bro, the pizza needs you." But no, she was flourishing, while I was basically the comic relief in her motivational reel. I tried to follow along, joining her self-discovery Zoom sessions, which mostly consisted of breathing exercises I couldn't do without sneezing or falling asleep. One night, she called me in tears, not mine, hers. Her tears were a mix of "you don't understand me" and "my chakra is sad." She asked me to sit with her energy and manifest emotional clarity. So I sat, tried my best to project vibes, and accidentally fell asleep mid-chant. Waking up, she said very softly, "You're never going to support me fully." And just like that, I realized I was being benched from life itself. A week later, she returned, not home, but to our shared email, sending me an invite to her New Life Gala, which was really just a virtual panel with life coaches I couldn't pronounce. I joined reluctantly, and in the first 5 minutes realized she had monetized my failure to support her growth. There I was, a guest star in her motivational TEDx Light lecture, a cautionary tale about the unsupportive spouse. And she looked radiant, and I looked like someone who'd been electrocuted by bad coffee and regret. I laughed nervously, mostly to hide the part of me that wanted to cry into a tub of ice cream. Then came the final blow. At her virtual gala, she revealed a new project, a book she was writing detailing how I had hindered her evolution with exact timestamps, screenshots, and embarrassing memes I had sent her at 3 a.m. She said, and I swear this is true, "I'm thriving because you didn't support me, and that's beautiful." Beautiful. As if my lack of chakra alignment had been the secret fertilizer to her personal garden. I couldn't even be mad because the logic was terrifyingly airtight. But the twist? Her self-growth journey ended with her asking me to come to a retreat with her. Apparently, now that I was the comic relief villain of her story, she needed me to participate in a weekend of healing, laughter, and relational alignment. I went, reluctantly, expecting candles and chanting. Instead, it was a bizarre combination of improv therapy, trust exercises, and a giant hamster ball obstacle course. By the end, I was sweaty, emotionally naked, and somehow laughing at myself more than ever. Somehow, she was right. Supporting her growth did mean supporting chaos, and I survived to tell the tale. Now, months later, we're technically separated, technically friends, and technically traumatized, but also laughing about how the whole thing escalated from a podcast idea to a full-blown life odyssey. I still don't understand chakras, but I know one thing. Love sometimes comes with cliffhangers, motivational Instagram posts, and the weird realization that your spouse might be a self-help guru using you as a plot twist. And me? I survived. Slightly scarred, definitely humored, and oddly proud that I didn't ruin her growth, even if she made me the punchline. Story number 3. My wife's affair was apparently my personal development lesson. I never thought my life would resemble a bad self-help book, but apparently my wife's affair was my personal development lesson. I found out because she left a suspicious sticky note on the fridge that said, "Dinner at 7. Don't forget your self-discovery." At first, I thought it was some ironic joke, like she was testing my Zen mastery. Spoiler, she wasn't joking. I confronted her, and she casually said, "I'm seeing someone else, but think of it as growth." Growth, like I should thank her for stabbing me in the gut while I was busy paying the mortgage. I laughed hysterically, and then cried. And that's how my first personal development session began, sitting on the kitchen floor, eating ice cream straight from the tub, wondering if I should meditate or call a divorce lawyer first. She moved out that night with the efficiency of a moving truck commercial. I stayed, surrounded by leftover takeout boxes and a newfound existential dread. That's when I realized, if this was a lesson, maybe I was failing it spectacularly. My friends gave the usual advice: gym, hobbies, therapy. I tried all of it. Yoga class? Humiliating. I fell over trying a downward dog and someone's phone recorded it. Hobby class? Painting. I ended up crying over a canvas that was supposed to be a serene lake but looked like a Rorschach test for someone having a panic attack. Meanwhile, she was apparently thriving. Instagram stories of her smiling at sunsets, holding hands with Mr. Growth. I considered showing up at one of her dates and loudly reciting motivational quotes I didn't understand. Then came the twist. My therapist, a man who looked like a cross between a monk and a confused raccoon, told me my lesson was to embrace chaos. Embrace chaos. I nodded, like I understood, secretly thinking he was wrong. But that night, chaos came knocking in the most literal sense. I got a call from a guy claiming he was her new boyfriend, but he sounded scared, like very scared. He said she'd run off to a yoga retreat in Mexico and she had left behind something unusual. Curiosity overpowered common sense. I went to her apartment, now empty except for a suspiciously heavy suitcase, opened it, and found a mountain of receipts, half a life-size llama piñata, and her diary, which started with, "Dear Chaos, let's do this." That's when I realized, if this was a lesson, it was going to get a lot weirder. Reading the diary was like peeking into a parallel universe where my ex-wife was the protagonist in a sitcom directed by David Lynch. Every entry alternated between earnest confessions and absurd obsessions. One day she loved gardening, next day she was obsessed with the psychological benefits of owning exactly 37 teapots. One passage described a dinner she had with her new boyfriend, where they apparently competed to see who could overuse the phrase personal growth the most. And then, plot twist, she admitted she sometimes pretended to like his indie band obsession just to study human behavior. I couldn't decide whether to be horrified or impressed. The llama piñata, I discovered, was her metaphorical representation of her past self, the one she was leaving behind. I nearly threw up from laughter and existential terror simultaneously. I decided I needed revenge. But I didn't want revenge. I wanted enlightenment, apparently. So I did the only logical thing. I started living like she had left a manual for maximal personal chaos. I bought a tiny inflatable pool for my apartment and filled it with dry pasta, because why not? I wore socks that didn't match. I spoke in motivational quotes at work and watched my coworkers' faces slowly twist into existential horror. People started calling me eccentric, others worried I was unhinged. I called it embracing chaos and emailed her a photo, me in a sombrero sitting in a pasta pool, captioned, "Lesson in progress." She didn't reply, which made me suspect either rage or admiration, maybe both. Then came the unexpected, ridiculous, and horrifying climax. One evening, I was meditating, Reed napping on the floor, when there was a knock at my door. It was the boyfriend. He was sweating, terrified, and clutching what looked like a rolled-up yoga mat. He whispered urgently, She left something for you." I braced myself for a bomb, a snake, or an existential life lesson in the shape of a llama piñata. He handed me a package. Inside, a USB drive labeled, "Do not watch while hungry or emotional." My hands trembled. I plugged it in. Video footage of her at the Mexico retreat began playing. She was teaching a workshop titled Healing Through Ridiculousness. Participants were dressed as vegetables. She looked directly at the camera at one point and said, "To grow, you must surrender to the absurd." I laughed, I cried, I threw popcorn. Then, out of nowhere, someone screamed, and the screen went black. Heart pounding, I realized my personal growth lesson had officially entered a thriller. I called the boyfriend, who admitted he had no idea what was happening and that the retreat organizer might have been a cultist obsessed with interpretive dance therapy. He insisted I come to Mexico immediately. Without thinking, I booked a flight, half terrified, half feeling like a contestant in a twisted game show. Landing there, I found a crowd of people in vegetable costumes chanting in what I assumed was a motivational language only coherent if you've had 6 mojitos. And there she was, standing on a giant inflatable llama, waving at me like nothing had happened. I wanted to yell, to confront her, to question all of humanity, but all I could do was laugh. She pulled me aside, grinning, and said, "See? Growth. Growth." And then, for the grand finale, the retreat organizer, dressed as a giant carrot, challenged me to a dance-off as a metaphor for letting go of attachment. I had 2 left feet, a bruised ego, and no idea how to salsa, but somehow I survived. When the dance ended, everyone applauded. Apparently, my lesson was complete. I realized then that life's absurdity can't be ignored. You can cry, scream, and buy mismatched socks, but sometimes the universe hands you a llama piñata, a betraying spouse, and a vegetable cult, and you just have to tango. I returned home a changed man. I kept the llama piñata, the diary, and the USB. I started a blog documenting my absurd journey titled Chaos and Growth. Readers loved it. Ex-wife occasionally sent cryptic updates. Once, she sent a postcard from Antarctica that said, "Keep dancing." I hung it next to my pasta pool. Life was chaotic, ridiculous, occasionally terrifying, but also hilarious. And every time I stared at that llama piñata, I reminded myself, personal development can look like betrayal, confusion, or dancing with vegetables in Mexico. And somehow, against all odds, I was thriving. Story number 4. She cheated and said I should be more understanding. So, I found out she cheated on me on a Tuesday. Yeah, a Tuesday, not a dramatic Friday night or a tragic Sunday morning, just Tuesday, which somehow makes it worse because it's a regular, mundane betrayal. I was sitting on the couch, scrolling through TikTok, when I noticed a weird notification on her phone. She left it unlocked because apparently she trusts me more than she trusts herself. Big mistake. There it was, a text from Mark that said, "Can't wait to see you tonight," heart icon. I blinked, read it twice, then accidentally read it 3 times aloud because apparently my brain wanted to make the trauma last longer. I didn't yell, didn't storm in. No, I just sat there, frozen, like a discount statue of a man betrayed. And then she walked in, humming some annoying pop song, completely oblivious. I swear the universe has a twisted sense of humor. I tried to play it cool at first. "Hey, who's Mark?" I said, because, confrontation is scary and I wanted to savor the emotional terror before unleashing it. She looked at me with those innocent eyes, like a cartoon raccoon who just got caught stealing Doritos. And then she said it. "Oh, it's nothing. You just need to be more understanding." I froze. Understanding, right. She's cheating, and somehow my problem is not understanding her needs. I laughed nervously, a kind of laugh that's half hysteria, half impending murder. She went on about emotional connection, and sometimes people make mistakes, which sounded like a TED Talk about why it's okay to kick someone in the groin. I wanted to scream, but I wanted to see how far this insanity would go. Then things escalated in ways I could not predict. I thought maybe it would be a quick, ugly fight. But nope, she suggested couples therapy. Couples therapy. After she cheated. My mind kept looping, am I in an episode of a reality show? I imagined a therapist's face, confused, tired, silently calculating how fast they could run from this disaster. But I agreed, because I'm either an idiot or a masochist. Fast forward to the session. She's sitting there, perfectly poised, describing Mark as if he were some minor inconvenience at a supermarket, while I'm exploding internally. At one point, she actually said, "I think you'll understand if you just try to see it from my perspective." Perspective. From the person who apparently sees me as a free emotional Uber. I wanted to ask, so should I also start having emotional affairs to expand my horizons? But somehow I held it together. Barely. The next day, things got weirder. I tried to act normal. Coffee, small talk, pretending everything was fine, but she kept dropping hints that she'd learned a lot about herself. Learned about herself? Cool. I've been learning about my blood pressure rising. Does that count? Then came the kicker. She invited Mark over for dinner, and I wasn't allowed to freak out because apparently it was about being inclusive and open-minded. I stared at her like she had grown another head. She actually said it's important for all parties to feel comfortable. Comfortable. Sure. Nothing screams comfortable like your partner and her side fling eating spaghetti in your kitchen while you're forced to smile like a hostage in a bad sitcom. Dinner was a circus.
Mark was ridiculously charming, which of course made me want to throw spaghetti at him like I was auditioning for a cooking-themed Mortal Kombat. She kept giggling at things only she and Mark found funny, leaving me to narrate my suffering internally. And then, out of nowhere, the smoke detector went off because Mark somehow decided flambeing frozen fish sticks was a good idea. Chaos. I slipped on the spilled oil, hitting the fridge with a loud thunk, sending a can of beans flying across the kitchen like a missile. Mark jumped, she screamed, and I just stared, dripping oil, realizing this was peak nightmare fuel. And through all that, she calmly said, "See, you should be more understanding about accidents." I almost cried, but mostly I laughed in a way that scared the cat. After that, I decided I needed an escape plan. But before I could, she dropped the ultimate twist. She wanted me to apologize for my lack of openness. My lack of openness. I tried to reason using logic and human decency as weapons, but she deflected everything like a pro dodgeball player. Then came the emotional roller coaster. She started crying. Not tears of guilt, but tears of frustration that I wasn't enlightened enough to handle this bizarre moral philosophy she invented called cheating is a growth opportunity. I almost hit my head against the wall, but my survival instinct kicked in. I decided to leave, but she blocked the door. Not with furniture, just her human barricade. At that moment, I realized this was less a relationship and more a live-action psychological thriller. So I did the only thing that made sense. I pretended to faint. Yep, like a melodramatic Victorian hero. She screamed, dropped her phone, and ran to me, all emotional chaos and panic. I seized the moment, rolled toward the door like an action hero in slow motion, and bolted. Outside, the air was crisp, the world normal, except for the slight burning sensation from slipping on residual oil by the door. But I didn't care. Freedom. Sweet, ridiculous, chaotic freedom. And then I got a text from her, because of course she had my number. It read, "I think you're overreacting. We can talk later. Be more understanding." I stared at it. I laughed. I cried. I considered buying a llama and running to Mexico. After that, I moved in with my friend, who is a saint or an idiot, I'm still not sure which. He welcomed me into his chaotic bachelor life, where the biggest betrayal is stealing the last slice of pizza. I started to rebuild my dignity, which mostly involved watching absurd YouTube videos and eating cereal for dinner. But then, the universe, clearly entertained, sent me a notification. She tagged me in a photo. On a date. With Mark. In my favorite restaurant. She captioned it, "We're just learning together. #growth. #understanding." I almost choked on my cereal. That's when I realized she had transformed cheating into a full-time career, and apparently I was the unwitting mentor. Fast forward a few weeks, I started dating again. Cautiously, like a cat with PTSD. But every time I felt myself getting serious, I remembered her face, her smug, "you just don't understand" smile, and my heart did that weird nervous twitch that warns, "Stay alert, you absolute fool." I also started telling friends this story at parties, exaggerating for comedic effect, and somehow people loved it. I became the guy with the wildest breakup story ever, the living embodiment of chaotic romance. Humor became my shield, sarcasm my sword, and pizza my faithful companion. And then, one night, out of nowhere, I got a DM from her. Just the words, "We should talk. I've changed." I stared at my phone. I laughed until I cried. I typed back, "Yeah, about understanding boundaries, right?" And left it at that. Because some stories don't need closure. They need witnesses. My life had become a dark comedy, a horror show with absurdist humor, and somehow I survived it. And the lesson? Never trust a Tuesday, always check notifications, and when someone cheats and tells you to be more understanding, maybe, just maybe, run. Or at least keep your sense of humor intact. Because in the end, if you can laugh while chaos rains spaghetti on your soul, you win.